My beloved child, I watched you walk through one of the hardest seasons of your life, even though you did not realize that what you were facing was a test. That is what made your faith so meaningful. You were not standing in a moment clearly identified as a spiritual trial. No voice announced that your endurance was being measured. No sign appeared to tell you how long the struggle would last or what would happen when it ended. You simply woke up each day carrying questions you could not answer, burdens you could not easily explain, and a weariness that seemed to sink deeper into your heart with every passing night. There were mornings when getting out of bed required more courage than anyone around you understood. There were evenings when the silence felt so heavy that you wondered whether your prayers were still reaching me. You searched for reassurance, but nothing seemed to change. You waited for a door to open, a burden to lift, or a clear answer to come, yet the days continued with the same uncertainty. At times you wondered whether I had stopped listening, whether you had disappointed me, or whether your name had somehow been forgotten in heaven. But you kept going. You did not always feel strong, hopeful, or certain, but you continued turning your heart toward me. You could have walked away. You could have decided that faith had failed you. You could have closed your heart and allowed disappointment to become bitterness. You could have stopped praying because the silence made prayer seem pointless. Yet even when you had no evidence that anything was changing, you still chose to remain. Sometimes your faith was expressed through confident words, but often it was much quieter than that. Sometimes faith was simply taking one more breath and refusing to give up. Sometimes it was whispering my name through tears. Sometimes it was choosing to believe for one more day when you did not know how you would face the next. I saw every one of those moments. Nothing about your struggle was hidden from me. I saw the nights when you lay awake, replaying the same questions in your mind. I saw the mornings when hope seemed to belong to other people, people whose lives appeared easier, whose prayers seemed to receive faster answers, and whose paths looked clearer than yours. You watched others move forward while you felt as though you were standing still. You saw opportunities appear for them while your own doors remained closed. You celebrated their progress, but part of your heart quietly asked, "When will it be my turn?" I heard that question. I heard every why, every broken prayer, and every word you could not bring yourself to say aloud. My silence was never evidence that I had abandoned you. It was not punishment, rejection, or proof that I had turned my attention elsewhere. I was closer than you knew. A refiner does not place gold in the fire and then leave the room. He remains near, watching carefully, measuring the heat, and ensuring that the fire fulfills its purpose without destroying what is valuable. In the same way, I did not leave you alone under the pressure. I watched every moment with perfect attention. I knew what you could endure, and I never allowed the flame to consume the truth of who you are. You thought I was silent because you could not hear an answer, but silence does not mean inactivity. While you were waiting, I was watching over you. While you were questioning, I was holding you together. While you feared that your faith was disappearing, my hand was protecting the smallest remaining thread of hope within you. There were moments when you believed you were falling apart, but you were not being destroyed, you were being formed. It is difficult to recognize formation while you are still inside the process. From your perspective, you saw exhaustion, delay, and uncertainty. From mine, I saw endurance growing stronger, trust becoming deeper, and a heart learning to remain faithful without depending on constant reassurance. I was never looking for flawless performance. I was not measuring how calmly you handled each day, or how perfectly you spoke every prayer. I was looking at your willingness to stay. Again and again your heart said, "I do not understand, but I am still here." That willingness mattered more than you realized. Every morning you chose trust again. Every night you placed an unknown tomorrow into my hands. Even the prayers that sounded more like sighs than sentences reached me. Not one disappeared. Not one was wasted. Heaven saw what the world could not see. The world may have looked at your season and seen weakness, delay, or defeat, but heaven saw worship. Every time you stood back up, heaven saw it. Every time you refused to let pain turn your heart cold, heaven saw it. Every time you chose to believe that I was still good, even when your circumstances offered no explanation, heaven saw it. What appeared to be stillness was not failure. What appeared to be silence was not abandonment. What appeared to be a season in which nothing was happening was a season in which the deepest parts of your faith were being revealed. You discovered that trust is not proven when every answer is visible. It is proven when the road is dark and the heart still chooses to follow. You discovered that faith is more than a feeling. Feelings rose and fell, but something within you remained. Even when your confidence weakened, you did not completely release your hold on me. And when your own strength was no longer enough, my hand held you. The thread never broke because I was holding the other end. My child, you passed the test. You may not feel victorious because the journey did not look like victory while you were living through it. There were no crowds applauding you, no visible rewards marking your progress, and no clear moment when you knew you had succeeded. But your victory was found in every quiet decision to continue. You passed when you prayed again after believing you had no more words. You passed when you woke up and faced another day. You passed when you refused to let disappointment separate you from me. You passed when you kept even the smallest opening in your heart for hope. The test did not prove that you were perfect. It proved that your faith was real. You came through the fire still believing, still loving, and still mine. The season did not take away what mattered most. It revealed what had been placed within you all along. You are standing now with a faith that has been tested rather than imagined, a strength that has been lived rather than borrowed, and a deeper understanding that my presence is not limited by what you can see or feel. Let this truth settle within you. I never lost sight of you. I never forgot your name. I never stopped listening. Through every silent day and every uncertain night, I was near, and I saw you choose me. The test is complete, my beloved child, and heaven remembers every step you took. My beloved child, now that you understand the season behind you was not abandonment, I want you to see more clearly why so much seemed to be removed from your life. You looked at the wilderness and saw emptiness. You saw people leave, plans collapse, opportunities disappear, and comforts you once depended on become unavailable. It felt as though your life was becoming smaller, as though everything familiar was being taken from you one piece at a time. You wondered why the road had become so narrow and why things you had prayed to keep were allowed to slip from your hands. But I was not reducing your life without purpose. I was making room. There is a difference between loss that destroys and pruning that prepares, and what you experienced was pruning. A wise gardener does not cut a healthy vine because he hates it. He cuts it because he sees what the vine can become. He removes what drains its strength, clears what has become tangled, and trims what grows in the wrong direction so the roots can deepen and the fruit can multiply. The cutting may feel severe to the vine, but the gardener sees the harvest that cannot yet be seen. In the same way, I allowed certain things to end because they were consuming strength you would need for what lies ahead. Some relationships were meaningful for a season, but were never meant to travel the entire road with you. Their departure did not always mean they were evil or that every memory was false. It meant their part in your journey had reached its conclusion. You tried to hold some connections together because you feared that letting go would leave you alone. But I knew that carrying what had already fulfilled its purpose would prevent you from receiving the relationships appointed for your future. I closed chapters you were reluctant to close because I could see beyond the page you were reading. Some plans fell apart because they were built around an earlier version of your life. You had invested time, emotion, and expectation in them, so when they collapsed, it felt personal. You thought their failure meant you had misunderstood everything or somehow missed your opportunity. Yet some of those plans would have kept you in places I was calling you to leave. They may have offered familiarity, but they could not have carried your future. What looked like a destroyed plan was often a rescued destiny. Some opportunities did not open because the path behind them would have consumed your attention, weakened your peace, or attached you to responsibilities that were not truly yours. You called those moments rejection because you could not see what waited beyond the closed door. I called them protection. Not every open door leads toward purpose, and not every closed door means you have been denied. There were things you desperately wanted because they seemed to promise relief, recognition, or security, but I knew what they would eventually cost you. I did not close them to punish you. I closed them because I loved you too much to let temporary desire determine the direction of your life. The wilderness also removed noise. Before that season, many voices competed for your attention. You listened to expectations, opinions, fears, comparisons, and the pressure to prove yourself. You were surrounded by so much movement that you sometimes confused urgency with guidance. When much of that noise disappeared, the silence frightened you. You did not yet recognize that I was teaching you to hear differently. My voice is not always found in dramatic signs, sudden answers, or visible miracles. Often, it comes quietly beneath panic and pressure, speaking with a steadiness that does not need to compete. You could not have learned to recognize that voice while every other sound remained equally loud. The stripping away became a tuning of your spirit. Slowly, you learned the difference between fear and wisdom, between pressure and conviction, between human approval and divine peace. You began to understand that my guidance does not always shout. Sometimes it rests gently within you as a quiet knowing, a restrained warning, or a small sense of peace about the next faithful step. The wilderness became your classroom. It taught lessons abundance could never have taught you. You learned to walk by trust when sight offered no reassurance. You learned to continue loving without knowing whether love would be returned. You learned that forgiveness is not pretending a wound never happened, but choosing not to let that wound rule your future. You learned that peace is not produced by perfect circumstances. It is found in my presence when circumstances remain unresolved. You learned that you could survive without some of the things you once believed were essential. You discovered that what truly sustains you does not come from applause, control, comfort, or certainty. It comes from knowing that I am with you. None of that learning was wasted. Not one tear fell without meaning. Not one sleepless night was ignored. Not one prayer disappeared because it seemed unanswered. Every difficult day carried a lesson, even when you were too tired to recognize it. Every disappointment exposed what could no longer support you. Every delay trained your patience. Every departure taught you not to build your identity around who stayed or who left. Every empty place invited your roots to grow deeper. You were not wandering without direction. You were being taught how to remain steady when external support changed. You were learning how to carry peace that does not collapse when circumstances shift. You were discovering a faith that could breathe even in stripped-down places. My child, the wilderness was not a meaningless gap between two important chapters. It was one of the most important chapters of all. It was where false dependence weakened and true trust grew stronger. It was where you stopped needing every answer before taking the next step. It was where you learned that my presence is enough to sustain you, even when nothing else feels secure. The season of stripping has now completed its work. What needed to be removed has been removed. What needed to be clarified has become clearer. What needed to grow deeper has taken root. You are not leaving this season empty-handed. You are carrying tested wisdom, quieter strength, sharper discernment, and a peace that has learned to remain when the world around you shakes. New growth has already begun, even if it is still beneath the surface. The wilderness did not leave you barren. It prepared the soil. The pruning did not diminish you. It redirected your strength toward what can truly bear fruit. Do not mourn every closed chapter as though your best days were left behind. Do not measure your future by what had to end. Some things were removed because they had fulfilled their purpose. Others were removed because they could not survive where you are going. Trust the care behind the cutting. Trust the wisdom behind the closed doors. Trust that the same hand that removed what no longer belonged is also preparing what does. The wilderness was not punishment, my beloved child. It was preparation, and you are stepping forward carrying everything it was meant to teach you. My beloved child, there were moments when obedience cost you far more than anyone around you could see. It is easy to follow me when the road is clear, the answer comes quickly, and doing what is right immediately leads to peace. But that was not the kind of obedience you were asked to give. Yours was formed in uncertainty. It required you to trust me while your emotions pulled you in another direction, to release what felt precious, and to move forward without knowing how the story would end. There were times when every instinct told you to hold on, defend yourself, demand an explanation, or take control. Yet somewhere beneath the fear, you heard my quiet invitation to surrender. You opened your hands even while they trembled. You let go even while your heart was breaking. You said, "Lord, I do not understand what you are doing, but I choose to trust you." That choice was not weakness. It was one of the strongest acts of faith you have ever offered me. Surrender is often misunderstood because the world measures strength by control, resistance, and the ability to force an outcome. But heaven recognizes a different kind of strength, the strength to place what matters most into my hands, without demanding that I explain every detail first. You did not obey because the decision felt comfortable. You obeyed because you believed my wisdom was greater than your understanding. You chose your relationship with me over the temporary relief of having your own way. That kind of obedience carries weight. It is not the obedience of someone performing a task to earn approval. It is the obedience of a child who trusts the heart of the Father even when the Father's plan remains hidden. I saw every time you made that choice. I saw when you walked away from arguments you could have continued. You had words that might have defended your reputation, corrected the story, or exposed the people who misunderstood you. Part of you wanted to speak until everyone recognized the truth, but you chose restraint. You learned that not every accusation requires an answer, and not every conflict deserves your energy. Staying silent did not mean you had nothing to say. It meant you refused to surrender your peace merely to prove that you were right. The world may have mistaken your silence for weakness, but heaven saw humility. Every time you chose peace over pride, you reflected something of my character. Every time you blessed instead of retaliating, you broke the cycle that pain was trying to continue through you. I also saw the forgiveness you offered to people who never apologized. Some of them may never understand how deeply they wounded you. Some may never acknowledge what they took, the trust they damaged, or the nights their actions caused you to lose. Forgiveness did not erase the truth of what happened, nor did it require you to pretend the wound was small. It meant you refused to give the offense permanent authority over your heart. Bitterness tried to convince you that holding on would protect you, but you recognized that resentment was only keeping you tied to the pain. So you released them, not because they had earned release, but because you desired freedom more than revenge. You chose me over bitterness. That decision was holy. It closed the door on a future poisoned by yesterday's wounds and made room for your heart to remain tender without becoming unwise. I saw you serve people who did not thank you. I saw you give your time, attention, compassion, and strength when you were already tired. There were seasons when you had needs of your own, yet you still noticed the needs of others. You encouraged people while carrying private discouragement. You prayed for those who had hurt you, and your prayers were not empty words spoken for appearance. You sincerely asked me to help them, heal them, and lead them, even while part of you was still recovering from what they had done. You did not live this way to purchase my love. My love was already yours. These choices were evidence that my love had taken root within you and was beginning to flow through you. Perfection was never the proof of my spirit at work in your life. The proof was love continuing to choose what is right, even when it had every reason to withdraw. Many of your most important acts of obedience happened in private. No one applauded when you resisted the temptation to return hurt for hurt. No one celebrated when you kept a promise that had become inconvenient. No one knew how much it cost you to remain honest, when dishonesty might have brought an easier result. You thought those moments were small because they were hidden, but they were not small to me. They became the unseen architecture of your character. Every private decision placed another stone into a foundation strong enough to support greater responsibility. Public strength is built through private faithfulness. What others eventually see in a person's life is often the result of choices made in rooms where no one was watching. I was watching. I recorded every moment when you chose integrity over advantage, patience over impulse, humility over recognition, and compassion over indifference. There were also times when you obeyed me, and the outcome still hurt. You followed the direction you believed I had given, yet something precious was still lost. You wondered why doing the right thing did not protect you from disappointment. You said, "Lord, I obeyed, so why did this still happen?" I did not dismiss that question. I knew the cost of your yes. In those moments, your surrender was being revealed at its deepest level. Would you trust me only when obedience produced the result you wanted, or would you trust me because of who I am? Again and again, your answer was yes. It may have been whispered through tears, but it was still yes. That yes proved that your faith was not built only on favorable outcomes. It was rooted in a relationship. You were not following me merely for what you hoped to receive. You were following because you had chosen to belong to me. Heaven does not measure faithfulness by visible achievement, applause, or how much a person appears to accomplish. Heaven looks at what was surrendered, especially in the places where surrender was costly. You gave me trust when certainty would have been easier. You gave me forgiveness when resentment felt justified. You gave me humility when pride offered immediate satisfaction. You gave me love when love required sacrifice. Those choices have shaped you into someone who can be trusted with more, not simply more opportunity or influence, but more responsibility, compassion, and purpose. My beloved child, your obedience was never wasted. Every hidden yes strengthened something within you. Every act of surrender loosened the grip of fear. Every decision to remain faithful prepared your heart to carry what could not have been safely placed into your hands before. You are not ready because you never struggled. You are ready because, in the middle of struggle, you repeatedly chose what was true. Costly obedience built within you a steady heart, and that heart has become a place where greater purpose can now rest. My beloved child, there were seasons when it seemed as though everything in your life was breaking at once. The ground beneath your plans gave way. The people you depended on were no longer there, and the future you had imagined collapsed before you could understand what was happening. You stood among the pieces of what you thought your life would become, and asked the question that rises from the deepest part of a wounded heart. Why did you allow this? I heard you. I saw the confusion behind that question, the exhaustion within it, and the fear that perhaps the damage had gone too far to be repaired. I did not look away from your pain, and I never treated it as something small. The breaking was real, but it was not meaningless. I allowed certain structures to fall because they had been built on foundations that could not carry the weight of your future. They may have looked stable on the surface, but beneath them were weaknesses you could not see: fear, dependence, false security, misplaced identity, or expectations that would eventually have failed you. I was not destroying what was meant for you. I was clearing away what could not support it. A builder who intends to raise something lasting does not place a permanent structure on unstable ground. He removes what is weak, digs deeper than before, and prepares a foundation strong enough to hold what will stand upon it. The shaking you experienced was not the end of construction. It was the sound of excavation. I was going beneath appearances, beneath habits, and beneath the ways you had learned to protect yourself. I was reaching the deepest places of your heart, because what I intended to build in you could not rest on anything shallow. You believed you were breaking apart, but you were being broken open. There is a difference. What merely breaks loses its purpose, but what breaks open releases what has been hidden inside. A seed remains closed and unfruitful until its shell gives way. From the outside, the splitting may look like destruction, but within it, life is beginning to move. The shell must yield so the living thing inside can reach toward the light. In the same way, the outer structures you relied on had to open so that the truest parts of you could emerge. Beneath the fear, there was courage. Beneath the disappointment, there was faith. Beneath the pain, there was compassion. Beneath the version of yourself you had learned to present to the world, there was a heart capable of carrying more truth, tenderness, and purpose than you knew. Your hardest moments did not create those qualities. They uncovered them. I saw you when you reached the end of your own strength. I saw you fall to your knees and admit that you could no longer hold everything together. You thought that confession meant you had failed, but it was the beginning of freedom. Surrender is not defeat. It is the moment you stop tightening your hands around what they were never meant to control and allow mine to support you. When you stopped trying to preserve what had already fallen, you discovered that you were not falling into emptiness. You were falling into me. My hands were beneath you before you knew you needed them. I did not allow you to disappear among the ruins. I held you there, in the place where your strength had ended, and began a work that could not have started while you were still pretending to be unbreakable. The cracks left by suffering are not proof that you are ruined. They are openings. Through them, grace can enter places that were once sealed by fear, pride, or self-protection. Through them, light can reach parts of you that had remained hidden. A heart that has never been opened by pain can sometimes remain guarded, distant, and unable to receive deeply or give freely. But your heart has been opened. You know what it means to sit with questions that do not have immediate answers. You know what it means to hope when hope feels fragile. You know what it means to keep breathing through a day you did not believe you could survive. Because you have known pain from the inside, you can now recognize it in others without judging them. You can sit beside someone who is suffering without rushing them, correcting them, or offering empty words. You can give them the gift of presence because you understand that sometimes presence is more healing than explanation. The breaking produced compassion in you, not compassion learned from a distance, but compassion formed through experience. It softened you without making you weak. It made you more tender while also making you more resilient. You now carry an understanding that comfort alone could never have taught you. The fire did not create your faith, it revealed it. Heat does not place gold inside the stone. It exposes what was already there. In the same way, your difficult seasons brought to the surface the strength, love, and endurance I had placed within you long before the testing began. You discovered that you could survive what you once feared would destroy you. You learned that your identity was deeper than your circumstances, your relationships, your plans, or your achievements. When those things changed, something essential within you remained. That was the part of you I had been protecting all along. What looked like chaos was construction. What felt like an ending was the beginning of a deeper work. I was building in places no one else could see. I was strengthening your inner life, expanding your capacity, and removing the fear that had convinced you that one more loss would finish you. You are not the same person who entered that season. You are wiser now. You recognize what matters and what does not. You are less easily impressed by appearances and less willing to build your life around what cannot last. You are more careful with your heart, yet more capable of loving honestly. You have learned that strength is not the absence of tears, and faith is not the absence of questions. Strength is continuing after the tears have fallen, and faith is remaining open to me even while some questions remain unanswered. There were moments when you felt scattered, as though pieces of who you once were had been lost beyond recovery. But not one part of you was lost to me. I gathered every fragment with care. I held every memory, every wounded place, and every hope you thought had disappeared. I was not putting you back together exactly as you were before because I was not restoring you to an earlier, less complete version of yourself. I was remaking you into the person you were always meant to become. You are not a damaged copy of who you used to be. You are a truer version, more honest, more grounded, more compassionate, and more aware of my presence. My beloved child, the breaking did not disqualify you. It prepared you. It did not erase your purpose. It uncovered it. You were not destroyed in the collapse. You were opened, gathered, and remade, and the one who has been carefully restoring you has not lost a single piece. My beloved child, now I want you to lift your eyes from what has been and recognize what is beginning. For a long time, you carried prayers so tender that eventually you stopped speaking them aloud. You did not completely stop believing, but the distance between the prayer and the answer became painful. Each time you tried to hope again, you remembered how long you had waited, how many times you had expected change, and how often the day ended with everything still appearing the same. So you placed those prayers deep within your heart, in the quiet place where hope goes when it has been wounded but has not died. You protected that place because you feared another disappointment might finally extinguish what little expectation remained. I know every prayer hidden there. I have not forgotten a single word, desire, or tear attached to them. What you stopped saying aloud never stopped being heard in heaven. The promise did not die because you grew tired of repeating it. The delay did not cancel what I had spoken. Beneath the silence, movement has already begun. The season that seemed fixed and unchanging is turning. What stood still is beginning to move. What felt sealed is beginning to open. What appeared distant is being drawn closer. You may not yet see visible evidence, but not all change begins where human eyes can recognize it. Winter does not surrender in one dramatic moment. Before the first signs of new growth appear, the frozen ground begins to soften beneath the surface. Warmth enters places that still look cold. Roots awaken before branches show life. In the same way, I am working in hidden places first. The answer is not merely waiting somewhere in the distance. It is already in motion. I am arranging timing, conversations, decisions, and circumstances that you could never coordinate through your own effort. I am touching hearts you cannot reach and placing your name in the thoughts of people you have not spoken to. Someone may feel unexpectedly prompted to contact you, remember you, recommend you, or speak about you in a place where you are not present. A conversation may begin that seems ordinary but carries consequences you could not have anticipated. A message may arrive at the very moment you have finally stopped checking. An opportunity may appear through a direction you never considered because the answer is not required to follow the path you imagined. You often expected me to respond through the most obvious channel. You watched one particular door, one particular person, or one particular outcome, and believed that if the answer came, it would have to come that way. But my wisdom is not limited to the routes you can see. I am not dependent on the people you thought were necessary. I do not need circumstances to look favorable before I begin to move. I can create a way where no visible path exists, and I can bring an answer through a direction that leaves no doubt that I arranged it. The unexpected nature of what is coming is not meant to confuse you. It is meant to free you from believing that your future depends on one human source. When the answer arrives, you will recognize my hand in its timing, precision, and fit. It may not announce itself with noise or spectacle. It may come quietly, yet something within you will know. The restless waiting will begin to loosen. The pressure you have carried in your chest will ease. A deep calm will settle over you. Not because every detail has already been explained, but because your spirit will recognize that something has shifted. That peace is important. Do not dismiss it as imagination or temporary emotion. I often send peace before the visible answer, as an early sign that what you have placed in my hands is being handled. Peace is the first fruit of movement you cannot yet see. It is my way of telling you that you no longer have to carry the burden with fear. You do not have to keep rehearsing every possible disappointment. You do not have to remain tense, expecting the next loss before anything has even happened. I know that waiting taught you to protect yourself. After repeated disappointment, the heart learns to expect less, so it will hurt less. You built walls around the place where hope once moved freely. Those walls helped you survive, but they cannot become your permanent home. I am asking you now to lower them. I am not asking you to become careless, naive, or without discernment. I am asking you to become open to me again. A guarded heart may avoid some pain, but it can also struggle to receive what has finally arrived. Do not let yesterday's delay cause you to reject today's movement. Do not let former disappointment convince you that every new possibility will end the same way. You are not being asked to force excitement or pretend that fear has vanished. You are simply being asked to leave enough room in your heart for hope to breathe again. The tears you cried during the waiting were not meaningless. Each one carried the weight of love, longing, and faith. You thought they fell into darkness and disappeared, but I gathered them. Those tears became seeds planted in the hidden ground of your journey. Seeds do not appear productive while they remain buried. They seem lost beneath the soil, yet within them, life is preparing to rise. Your private tears watered prayers that are now pushing toward the surface. The nights when you wept because you could not see a way forward were not empty nights. The moments when all you could offer was a trembling, "Please help me," were not weak prayers. They entered the ground of promise, and nothing planted in faith is forgotten by me. The answer may not look exactly like the picture you held when you first began praying. Time has changed you. The person who first asked is not the same person standing here now. Your understanding has deepened, your desires have been refined, and your capacity has grown. What comes must fit who you have become, not merely who you were when the waiting began. That is why some answers required preparation on both sides. I was not only preparing something for you, I was preparing you to recognize it, receive it, and carry it with wisdom. Now remain attentive, without becoming anxious. Expectation is not frantic searching. Faith does not require you to chase every possibility or interpret every small event as a sign. Stay grounded. Continue living faithfully. Notice the quiet movements, the unexpected conversations, the new sense of clarity, and the peace that arrives without explanation. When the next step becomes visible, do not demand to see the entire road before you move. Respond to what I place before you. The way forward may unfold one instruction, one conversation, and one decision at a time. My beloved child, the stillness is ending. The hidden work is approaching the surface. What you carried silently has not been forgotten, and what you feared was lost has remained before me. Let your heart open again. Let hope return without forcing it. Let peace replace the need to control every detail. The season is turning, the answer is moving, and you are closer to visible change than you have been able to see. My beloved child, the new chapter opening before you is not only about receiving what you have waited for, it is about becoming able to recognize it, carry it, and use it with wisdom. Restoration is beginning to reach the places where loss once seemed permanent. I am not offering you a shallow replacement for what was taken or a temporary distraction from what still hurts. I am bringing healing that reaches the roots, clarity that settles confusion, and renewal that allows you to move forward without remaining emotionally trapped in what happened before. Some things will be restored in forms you recognize, while others will return in ways greater and more fitting than what you originally imagined. Do not assume restoration always means returning to the past. Sometimes I restore by bringing something back, and sometimes I restore by leading you into something new that gives meaning to what you endured. The years you thought were wasted are not beyond my ability to redeem. The time spent waiting, recovering, learning, and rebuilding has not been removed from your story. I will use it. What seemed like delay has given you discernment, depth, and strength that will allow you to walk differently when the right opportunities appear. Doors will open, but not every door you once wanted will reopen. Some remain closed because they would have drawn you away from peace, consumed your energy, or connected you to a future too small for the purpose within you. As the right doors begin to move, you will understand why certain others never did. You will look back without the same resentment and say, "Now I see why that could not continue." The doors I appoint will not merely offer relief from difficulty. They will lead toward purpose. They may require courage, responsibility, and growth, but they will carry a peace that striving could never produce. Do not force doors that remain shut, and do not hesitate before the ones I clearly open. You may not receive a complete picture of the road ahead because you do not need every detail in order to move faithfully. I will show you the next step. Take it when it becomes clear. Do not refuse to move simply because you cannot yet see the step after it. Guidance often arrives in stages. The light for tomorrow will come when you reach tomorrow's place. For today, trust what has been placed before you. Where there has been relational pain, healing is also beginning. I am working in hearts you cannot control, and in conversations you cannot arrange by force. Some misunderstandings will be clarified. Some communication that became strained may begin again with greater honesty and humility. Certain people you quietly grieved may return in a healthier form of connection. Yet understand this clearly. Not every relationship is meant to be restored. Some belong to a chapter that has already closed, and bringing them back would reopen what I have been helping you heal. Do not measure restoration by how many people return. Measure it by the peace, truth, and health that become possible in the relationships that belong in your future. I will give you wisdom to know the difference between reconciliation and repetition, between genuine change and familiar patterns, and between compassion and the loss of necessary boundaries. You can forgive without returning to the same harmful place, and you can love people without allowing them to direct your life. Where there has been uncertainty about provision, I have not ignored your practical needs. I know the concerns that followed you into the night, the calculations you repeated, the responsibilities you carried, and the fear that there would not be enough. My care for you is not limited to spiritual language. I know you live in a body that requires food, rest, shelter, stability, and resources for daily life. The provision I bring may come through work, opportunity, assistance, unexpected favor, wise decisions, or channels you could not have opened alone. Receive it with gratitude and steward it carefully. Provision is not given merely to calm fear for a moment. It is meant to establish stability, enable responsibility, and create the capacity to bless others without returning to anxiety. Do not let former lack make you cling so tightly to what arrives that you become unable to use it according to its purpose. Hold it with gratitude, wisdom, and open hands. My child, the greatest evidence of this new chapter will not be found only in improved circumstances. It will be found in who you have become. You are no longer the same person who entered the season of difficulty. Your capacity has expanded. You can carry more peace because you learned how to find it beneath the surface of chaos. You can offer more grace because you know how desperately grace is sometimes needed. You can love more wisely because you have learned that love requires both tenderness and truth. You can recognize what is genuine because appearances no longer impress you as easily as they once did. Stop comparing yourself with the version of you that existed before the pain. That person was not more complete simply because life appeared easier. You now possess a depth that comfort alone could never have produced. You are more grounded, discerning, compassionate, and prepared. Do not define yourself by the scars of the journey, but do not despise them either. They testify that you were wounded and still healed, pressed and still endured, shaken and still remained. Your identity does not depend on what you receive in this next season. You are mine before any door opens, before any relationship is repaired, and before any provision arrives. You do not belong to me because you performed perfectly or endured impressively. You belong to me because I chose you, and nothing in the waiting changed that. Let this belonging become the foundation beneath everything else. Blessings can change, opportunities can shift, and people can come and go, but my presence remains. Build on that, and what rises in your life will not depend entirely on circumstances for its stability. What I am doing through you will also extend beyond you. The people you carry in your heart, the ones you pray for quietly, and those who have watched your journey will be touched by what unfolds. Your restoration will become evidence that suffering does not have the final word. Your peace will encourage someone who is still afraid. Your story will strengthen someone who is close to giving up. Your compassion will create safety for those who feel unseen. Your faithfulness will show others that waiting is not always wasted, and that a difficult chapter does not mean the story has ended. You will not need to exaggerate what happened or present yourself as someone who never struggled. The power of your testimony will be found in its honesty. You were tired, but you continued. You were wounded, but you did not surrender your heart to bitterness. You questioned, but you remained open to me. And now others will see what grace can build from a life that was once surrounded by uncertainty. Walk into this season with open hands. Do not cling to what is behind you, and do not constantly brace yourself for another disappointment. Receive what comes without making it your identity. Use what I place in your care with humility. Let your life become a channel rather than a closed container. I will be with you in the harvest just as I was with you in the planting. I will be present when the doors open just as I was present when they remained closed. My presence is the gift that gives meaning to every other gift. The road behind you has shaped you, but it no longer has the authority to confine you. Step forward with wisdom, gratitude, courage, and peace. Restoration is becoming purpose. Purpose is becoming testimony. And your testimony will remind others that my faithfulness remains constant through every season.